Hey, it's Chris. Kickstarter overview for this week, and there is a lot. So I'm going to try and make this brief, but as always, thanks for checking me out. Thanks for checking the channel out. If you like what you see, 2021 and 2021, I'm trying to get as many subscribers as I can, and just show me any likes or supports if you feel like it's worth it. And if it's not, check it out anyway. I might surprise you, or I might just terrify you. Who knows? So anyway, let's talk about the Kickstarters this week, and let's go right into it. So first up this week is one that I talked about last week on the previews. It's Kingdoms of the Deep, and it's a follow-up to the Animal Kingdoms game by Galactic Raptor Games. And the theme and the coloration, it's very similar to that. Now, what is this game? This is a area control game of an underwater variety. And the interesting thing is, as you can see in the picture here, they've adapted a hexed-based approach to increase variability within this game. Is it's scored a little bit differently in terms of how it progresses throughout the game, in terms of also the end game. What I mean by that is, if you're familiar with El Grande is, and similar to this game, in rounds 3, 6, and 9, you're scoring for points along the way. You also have other variables within the actual gameplay itself that give you points, as in with some of these terrain tiles. There's a special Atlantis one in the center of the board. If you ever move a cube there, you also get to score a point. Now, the important thing there is the wording that I just used. And so what you do is you start off with one of these 6 factions. All of these factions, I believe, are the same. I think it's more just a coloration and an animal aquatic life sort of thing. So it's not asymmetric as far as I'm aware. And you only have 6 possible actions, which 6 is a lot, but it's also not an overwhelming amount considering what one of the 6 is, and that is the reset. And that ties into the rounds that I previously mentioned. Now, why is that important? It's because each of these actions you can only use once by playing the card down before you have to recollect them up back into your hand. And why that matters is what the reset is to pull your cards back up. Well, why does the reset matter? Because any time a person uses this reset action, not you, not everybody, any time one person uses the reset action, it moves the round tracker further. And when it gets to the rounds 3, 6, and 9, like I mentioned, you score. And when it gets to 9, the game is over. So this is a very quick game, especially if people are pushing it a lot. So what are your actions besides the reset? You can move. You can move a cube. Now, see, that goes back to the wording I said, that you can move your own creatures, your own cubes, your opponents, or even the shark. And this is also, if you move somebody into Atlantis, you get a bonus point. You can deploy. So again, these are all very straightforward. You're putting one in an area you have or next to an area. You're going to bolster. You have certain types of tiles that you are strength in. And so I think that's the main maybe difference in the factions. And so that is where you can automatically put one, whether or not you have one to begin with. Upgrade. So you saw on the player boards that you have all of these different actions that you can take, and you can upgrade each of these individual actions one by one. And so depending on how you want to upgrade, you may be able to do some of these actions better than others, including the reset. And then the last one is the shark. Sharks eat other creatures, yours and other people's, so use it wisely, along with that move action that I mentioned earlier can be used on. Again, the reset action that you can upgrade as well. So not only by resetting, taking your cards back, you have the additional ability to have an additional action with that, so it's not just sort of a wasted turn like in some games that it can be or can be thought of. Here it goes. This is how you score. Majority. The rule book's on there. Lots of quotes from various channels, some preview videos. Now here we get to the pledge levels. $39 for what it is. You get their other game, Lost Kingdoms. You can get the Roarin' Right. You can get all of the Kingdom games. Personally, I can take it or leave it when they throw in other games in these. I feel like sometimes it's a way to help things fund more than anything else, rather than necessarily the product on its own, which for some of these smaller publishers is probably not a bad idea. Now, this game isn't funded yet. I'm a little surprised because of the theme and because the area control is different than I've seen in terms of especially the scoring. It's unique enough that I anticipate this to fund relatively easily, and the funding goal is relatively low. So I hope it doesn't take this slower-ish start and say, you know what, we're just going to cancel and redo things at a later date and see if we can get a hotter start. I am really not personally a fan of that in general, almost no matter what the reason. Obviously, there are exceptions, but in general, I don't like seeing that. Is the price point good? I don't know. The price point is a little bit more than I would expect for hexes and cubes, to be honest with you. But again, I think this is more of the smaller publisher, and it's just going to cost a little bit more. I'm also not the biggest fan of ambiguous wording when it comes to these. So it says Kickstarter limited. It might be difficult to find it after the campaign outside of select conventions. I wish you would just flat out tell me, hey, look, you know what? We're not going to be doing this at regular retailers unless it hits this certain level. Or you know what? We're going to be selling this on our web store, but it's going to cost you more. I wish that was a little bit clearer. I mean, they do talk about that they're going to sell extra copies at a higher cost, but what's that higher cost going to be? Where is it going to be? I don't know what the stretch goals are going to be in this case. I would think maybe other factions. Is it going to be gameplay? Is it going to be, especially as a small publisher, just component upgrades? I wish you would give, especially even on these small ones, motivation for people to back so they can, by seeing what those stretch goals are and what they're trying to get to, what they're trying to unlock. Especially, like I said, as a small game company, oftentimes there are actual stretch goals because they just aren't going to have the funds like some of the bigger ones have that little bit of extra puff room to be able to do. I wish they would put them up on the page almost right away at the beginning of the campaign, because then you can also see how realistic they are depending on how spaced out they are as well. Let's go right into the next one, and let's talk Runelords, the board game. It's got a $50,000 goal. It is a hex-based skirmish game. It's got a low funding goal. It's non-miniature. It's standee. 48-hour early backer reward, legendary card foil pack. You're getting it instead of an add-on. It says it's something really different. I'll be honest, it's not really that appealing, even though the price for $49 sounds relatively good. And I don't mean to sound negative in that sense, but especially with all of the high-end quality products in terms of art, in terms of production, in terms of just rendering nowadays, this seems not to be quite up to par with its competitors. For that reason, especially when it comes to just all of this, it just seems like it needs a finer tooth comb to refine it, to get more eyes on it in the first place. I don't really know. It seems a little bit less intuitive than I would like with some of this just symbology and how it's actually played. It just doesn't pass the eye test for me. And so for that reason, it's hard for me to get further invested, despite it saying that it's unique in these ways. It seems very generic to me, and I wish that it could emphasize, okay, you know, what is something more that it's going to bring to the table than what I'm seeing in other games right now, despite some of the quotes, despite some of those don't tell me enough. This is a little bit better here down at the end with some of the villains, but again, I can't look at this and tell, and you need to be able to just have a very clear picture of what that is, and I just don't get it with this. Enough so that I'm hesitant to dive a little bit deeper. I know that this is a relaunch, so they've clearly built things up better than it was previously, but it just doesn't capture me, and it's an easy pass for me right now. Next is Castles of the Mad King Ludwig. Again, this was a big one. Bezier Games. It's almost at $500,000, 3,400 people, and I really like the way they present this Kickstarter, just the way they've presented it here at the top. They make it very clear right at the top, right at the beginning. There is no ambiguity, confusing wording. This is what you're getting. Why would you back this? New art, recessed scoreboards, game trays, player markers, bonus cards, the existing expansions, the new expansions, miniatures, 5th player option, and whatever else we can throw in there. So they make it very clear the first second you scroll down, you're not hit by miniatures, you're not hit by components, you're not hit by quotes, you're hit by, why am I getting this now? What makes it different? If you're designing a campaign, boom, there you go. That is an example to use. This is not a cheap collector's game. $169 for it all. That's not insignificant for a game that's been out at retail with a couple of expansions. You know, $40 a game, $30 an expansion, that's a lot. So I'm not sure if that's worth it right now. At the collector's level, you get the upgrade replacement, so you're getting a lot of the upgraded components, and then just the collector's level. So I don't really know if you need all of that stuff. It seems more like the deluxeification without calling it a deluxeification. Instead, they're calling it Royale. It reminds me of the joke, what do you call, a quarter pounder with cheese in France? Anyway, You know where I'm going with that Pulp Fiction reference. Anyway, so colossal, again, same thing. It just seems like a fancier word for saying we're going to deluxe this, and then we're going to deluxify the heck out of this. And that's what we're going to call it. So game trays, you're seeing those everywhere nowadays. They become better just because they're not just the shipping inserts that we're so used to seeing in these games. It's an actual design insert for being able to play it easier. Artwork, again, the artwork that's actually a really good upgrade. I'm really surprised. This is my first time looking at this page. Expansions, again, secrets, limited Polish expansions, 2 new ones. I just was not a big fan of this game to begin with. This game is a really easy pass for me because it never interested me after I played it just with the regular, plain old retail version. Again, with Towers rooms, adding another dimension to it. I sometimes wonder with all these expansions, is too much of a good thing? You make it too complicated, sort of like Isle of Skye or Carcassonne, where sometimes it just needs to stay true, and sometimes a little bit more is better than a little bit more complex because it loses the elegance. And that's what I worry about with a game like this, is that the people who like it, all of a sudden, there's going to be so many rules, so many nitpicks, so many combinations. You're just going to be struggling to remember all the minutiae rather than just being able to play it to the full extent. It's going to become more of a mental arithmetic, mental gymnastics chore than it is going to be just the sheer fun of matching the rooms next to each other and playing in that way. Again, you've got summer, you've got winter sides. They go through the rules. They go through the upgraded tokens here. Colossal upgrades. So colossal rooms, secret passages, foyers, tower rooms, more organizers, more waterfalls. So a lot of stuff. It's just how much of that stuff is going to be good and how much of it is going to get used. I mean, I can't even imagine playing with half of this stuff, having 5 expansions, says someone who just went in on Primal The Awakening today. The irony there is not lost on me, people, but I guess it depends on what you're willing to get to the table. With a game like this versus a game like Primal, you're playing one expansion after the other, sort of in sequence. In this, you have the option to mix and match, but you also are playing them all at the same time. So playing them all at the same time may drastically increase the complexity, and it may also drastically increase the length of time of the game in and of itself in the first place. Whereas Primal, the game is going to remain the same. Whether you do the expansion boss versus the regular boss, the complexity is going to remain the same. The time is going to remain relatively the same. So you can start to see the difference when you have the expansions in one versus expansions in the other. And maybe it's just what you prefer in that sense. So if you like bling, this is a campaign that has a lot of bling. And I don't mean that as a negative. I just mean that it's just got a lot. It's very well stylistically the opposite end of the spectrum from Runelords. I mean, the detail, the color work, it's just so precise, it's so high end that it's hard not to look at this and just be impressed. And just like with Suburbia, these stretch goals are wide, but they'll probably hit a lot of them. I don't really have anything to comment on because, again, this is an easy pass for me because I'm not interested in the base game at all. It's an expensive game for what it is. Will you spend $100 or $200 on an epic narrative, huge campaign game? Will you spend $200 on Carcassonne right now? Will you spend $200 on Splendor? An upgraded, fancy version of Splendor. That's sort of where my mind goes. And again, mental gymnastics, I'm able to justify it for one and not the other. And maybe you're different than I am and you justify it on this side of things. And great. If you're super happy with this, if you love Castles of the Mad King Ludwig, all I've seen here on this page for the first time looking through it, you're going to love this. There is just so much freaking content here that I don't think you could be disappointed because it's going to give you all you could have wished for and more than you could have imagined. So there you go. Castles of the Mad King Ludwig. Scribbletown. Again, the trend of more 2019 roll and writes. And this is more of you're building your city. So basically you're trying to do a city planning type of write and roll here. You're rolling dice, you're drawing those in your city, and then you're building this. And it kind of reminds me of, speaking of Bezier games, more of a Suburbia type roll and write, because what's next to what matters, and you can get penalized if you have things that should not be next to each other. You also have to connect them all by roads. So it's got the grid hex-based system you're drawing in there. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of roll and writes. The only roll and write I have is really Cartographers, which isn't exactly a roll and write. And then I also have Let's Make a Bus Route, which again is not really a roll and write. This type of game is something that is a good filler for myself, but not something that I would want to play repeatedly in a row either. And I say that with Let's Make a Bus Route and Cartographers as well. Play it once or twice and I'm good for a couple weeks. You know, I don't need to play it repeatedly over and over and over. I have a hard time differentiating these and telling exactly which one is really going to be good, because I've seen a lot of these pop up as additionals. You saw it with Dinosaur Island. You saw it with a couple of the Queen games that got thrown in on top of the campaigns. And the question is, I don't think you can tell nearly as easily about how good a game like this is going to be until you play it, as opposed to a lot of other games, just by the nature of how the roll and writes differ in their mechanisms. So for me, roll and writes are definitely a try before you buy. Wait for retail until you can see what it actually looks like and how the game actually plays in more of a outside of a bubble setting, if you will. But again, I think roll and writes are not what I would be backing as a risk on Kickstarter. Call of Madness. If this looks familiar, it's because it is. It was on last week's. They canceled because they didn't fund quickly enough, and they were still in the process of funding, and so they canceled and relaunched a week later. I doubt they saw my video, but they clearly did what I suggested of, hey, brand the heck out of this as a very unique experience, as a tower defense game where you're the bad guys instead of the good guys. So I'm not big enough that anyone actually watches my videos in that sense, but that's what you needed to do. Again, emphasizing, I don't like necessarily always the early birds, but you've clearly funded because of it, and you've marked it out at the top that this is why you should come here and do this now. So you've funded, you've already beaten well over where you were last week, so that's an achievement. Again, it's a different take on the tower defense where you're trying to call one of the old gods and you're using your actions to basically deplete the resources of your enemies so they can't summon as fast, and you're sending the good guy investigators to try and stop them instead of stopping you. And the first one that runs out causes the game to end, and whoever has the most and the most points is going to be the winner. They added a bunch of stuff in the base game because I think they were concerned that people didn't think there was a good enough value. So here again, you're throwing it at the top, enticing people. What's different about it now than the last time when it failed? Personally, bags and tokens don't really do a whole lot for me. God cards, another God card, great. Solo mode, again, doesn't do anything for me. But clearly, it has won people over. It's doing a lot better, and so you're going to see what else they've got in store. Again, I think it's decently well priced, especially in this 48-hour early bird for $50. I think that's a relatively good price. That'll probably hold up relatively well if they get a whole bunch of add-ons. So it looks like the price is not different between the early bird and this. You're not getting the art book and you're not getting the solo mode stuff. It's tricky. But all in all, it's not my type of game. I am not a huge fan on Cthulhu. I have just become worn out on that. The only Cthulhu game I am really a decently big fan of at this point is Cthulhu Death May Die, because that's a completely different aspect. A lot of the other Arkham games really don't hold my intrigue just by the nature of how they differ. Having read this rulebook, having talked about it last week, I mean, you're getting a lot more now that you're breaking through the stretch goals. So again, I think it's going to be a very niche, very unique game along the lines of some of the other games that do things very differently. But I have no problem, again, passing on it. But if you're looking for tower defense, it's probably worth a look because it's a completely different spin. PvP tower defense is not out there at all. So I had to talk about this just because I want to do a little bit of a rant. $250,000, 141 backers at this point. So that's a lot of money. These are expensive, and these never fail to fund. And I just feel like these are very tricky to gauge. Like $1,500 a table. You talk about spending $200 or $300 on a game, $1,500 on a table, which honestly is probably good compared to what an actual kitchen table would cost you as a full size. So I just always think this is interesting. It's so weird. This is such a different market that it falls into the board game, but there's no way of predicting how well this is going to hold up at a retail price or how well this is going to do, especially with a niche company if they're just catering to gaming tables and not sort of a subsection of a larger company. I worry because there was the whole, one of the other companies a couple years ago went out of business and people couldn't get their tables. That just always is prevalent when it comes to these accessories for me, as opposed to just being able to go to a store where I can literally get the product the same day or the next day and have it suit my needs. Or honestly, you see the DIY stuff all the time. And if I was handy at all, I would be building my own if I could. That's neither here nor there. So anyway, it's going to fund. It's going to get a lot of money. There's going to be a lot of tables. How successful it is and how does it compare to the other tables that are out there? Frankly speaking, I have no idea. I can't gauge this. There's stuff that you can't always gauge with the quality of what this is going to look like in your home by pictures. It just doesn't do you justice. Renders do not make me comfortable with furniture. Okay, anyway, that's all I'm going to talk way too much on that. Bunny Party at Maple Valley. Again, I talked about this one. It's probably going to fund. It's a very indie type game. It's already at almost 50% of its goal. It's a relatively straightforward game, trying to basically create the best party at night by collecting moons and stars and using your characters and their abilities to decorate your sort of party area the best you can, hiring people to help you do that, trading between depending on how badly you want to have some take that versus helping out your neighbor. The interesting thing in this game is that depending on which token you go for, either the stars or the moons, someone else is also going to win. So if it's one, the person on your left wins. If it's the other, the person on your right wins. So you have sort of a motivation to help somebody and maybe not help somebody else depending on how things break down. Again, $15 is a really good price for a physical copy of the game. You're getting additional all this other stuff for $25. Personally, I don't see the need for the add-on. But again, I guess I just wonder, $15 plus shipping, it's not horrible. It's for a light card game. I guess the main concern would be if you want to get this, you're backing an indie backer, that this game is probably not going to get wide distribution. And you probably won't be able to find it very easily. Whether or not the price holds up is a whole different issue. But if it's just not available, it's just not available. It doesn't matter if it's still $15 if there's just no copies available in the first place. So one of those indie games that if you want to support indie games on here, this is a very prototypical indie type game. And it's worth checking out if you like sort of more of these light 20-30 minute card games that you can play multiple times or play multiple things in an evening. Again, it has no appeal to me, but I see the reason why it's important to have games like this on Kickstarter. So last but not least, we're gonna lead up all to this because this is the main one that launched on Tuesday. We'll have the Wednesdays and Thursdays after this, but this is the big one on Tuesday. Primal the Awakening. We're already over $1 million, 4,000 backers. That's a lot of money per backer, and that's because in case you somehow missed the news, as I talked about earlier briefly, the gameplay all-in is $290. That you're getting 4 extra expansions, including a 5th player expansion, which frankly, I'm not really sure I need. I think there's honestly probably too much downtime with the 5th player expansion based on how the combat is from what the rule book says. I don't think I would play this with 5 players. But you're getting 3 other monster expansions, and you're going to see what all the stretch goals are. And then they mentioned in the first update today already that there's going to be unlocks, daily unlocks. So I'm wondering if they blew past all of their expectations, and they're going to be switching to unlocks, sort of like Oathsworn did. Speaking of Oathsworn, I'm going to have a video coming out in a day or two comparing this and Oathsworn. What should you look at? What should be of interest? Why should you back one or get one over the other? So if that's of interest, throw me a sub. Anyway, the core is not cheap either. The core is $170 as well. And that is just the core with none of those other expansions. And so you get 4 of those expansions, like I mentioned. That's $30 in expansion, essentially, because that's $122 more-ish than what the core just is. So the question is just going to be, what else are these stretch goals provide? Are we going to see more monsters? Are we going to see more characters? Because that's really what this game is. It's not the characters that are unique, it's the weapons that they use. All the characters, you can build them however you want, but each of the weapons has different characteristics, and they each have different elements, and you can be forging, and it's really just a straight up head-to-head boss battle, forge, deck construct, battle. Take sort of a quest to determine which one you're going to battle, but otherwise just move on to the next battle. So it's not the narrative campaign style type game that I think some people were hoping that it would be. And it's really just you go kill monster, rinse and repeat. And I mean that in a very good way. But if you're looking for more of the KDM, more of the campaign, more of the narrative, more of the civ building in between, this is not your game. You're going to be sadly disappointed by what you see in here otherwise. So here you go. Here's one of the expansions, the 5th player expansion. Here you go. Actually, new hunter class. So there you go. She's got these little scythe, dual blade scythe type things. Again, heavy gun. They're going big on this. So there are your 2 classes. I didn't even know this. This is my first time fully looking at the page, obviously. You're getting a new monster, or monsters, in the feather expansion. So you have 1 monster there, 2 monsters. Okay, so going back to what I said, on that side of things. If you're getting 2 monsters per box at $40, with these things being potentially as big as they are, all of a sudden that becomes much more worth it. Now, again, how variable are these monsters going to be? That is my main concern, and that is the one reason you may not go all in right away. Or, and this is where it gets tricky, it's $2.99 for the early bird. It's $2.89 right now, so it's only $10. And so it might be worth it until you get more mechanics known, because this is only a short campaign, to wait until the pledge manager to see if that extra $10 is worth it once we know how different and unique these monsters actually are. Because what if these monsters are just slightly reskins of each other, and you have 3 or 6 of them potentially with the 3 expansions that are all just slightly reskins? Then you're going to feel kind of silly that you spent an extra $120 on just reskins. I don't think this is going to see regular retail. So this might actually be true. This is going to be an on-web store only probably thing. You're not going to see this even in the bigger markets. Exclusive content, I don't know. It depends on what the stretch goals are. Here are your tiers again. Here are your add-ons. And the add-ons individually, yeah, they're really giving you a better deal with all of those. So you might be better off just, I mean, let's do the math here. 47, 47, 47, that's 141. That is what, $170. So 170, it's only 122 more. So you're saving almost $50 than if you buy them individually there. Interesting to know. Here you go. Day 1, day 2, unlocks, hunt events. So what is going to be there? There's tons of videos already out there. King of Average, Rahdo, Board Game Co., Beastie Geeks, Board Game Co. playing with Quackalope, One Stop Co-op Shop. Everybody under the sun has got a copy of this but me, so I'm a little jealous. And they have everything. They have actually, I give them credit for this. They have unboxings, they have learn to plays, they have how to plays, and they just have previews. And they've sorted them and labeled them by that. Holy cow. If you learn nothing else on how to run a Kickstarter page, labeling your videos on what they actually are, the previews versus the unboxings versus the learn to play in a very succinct manner, this is perfect. This is perfect from that. I've read the rule book. I know what this is like. I am a big fan of this. I am not a big fan of the price, but I am likely going to keep it just because I don't think I want to miss this as well. I'm going to do a full video breaking this down, looking at it into more detail, especially when we have more detail, because you can guarantee they're going to go into more detail, especially about the expansions. And my video, as always, will probably be later than everyone else's, because everyone else is going to probably rush to have this one out by Thursday, but you're not going to have all the information. So I hesitate for that reason, so I can give you a more complete assessment of whether or not you should back this. Okay, let's move on. I've talked about that enough, especially since I'm dedicating a whole video to it. So let's take a look at Carnegie, the deluxe edition. Already over $125,000 in the first day. Again, it's €1. It's getting a deluxe edition. What sets it apart from the other Euros even that is on Kickstarter currently? Well, for starters, it's a little bit lower price than Darwin's Journey, because that's the main one it's really going up against besides Tinner's Trail. So it's €65 instead of €70. Right then and there, you're getting a deluxe edition like I mentioned. So it's got all the main quotes that are hyping it, you know, from all get out and everywhere. But what do you actually need to know about the gameplay? There are a lot of things going on in this game. It is deceptively simple at first glance, especially when they describe sort of the actual gameplay, because it describes it as only having 20 rounds, but each of those rounds, everybody can take an action, and everybody gets one turn per round. So really, if you're playing with 4 people, there's going to be 80 actions that you're going to be taking, because when you place this little orange marker on the row that is designated what the action is, everybody is going to take that. And so this is where the strategy comes in, and there is a little bit of inadvertent or indirect take that, because you might be able to know what other people may want or need, or what may not benefit them that much, and you may be able to select what you want or what's going to be less desirable for them based on which row is going to not do that for them. And so each of these rows have multiple actions that you can take, or multiple features in which you can take a turn. And so, for example, this top one is, and it's either take an income or make a donation. You're going to get money in so that you can buy workers, you can buy workstations for workers, you can build a new department for those workers to go into, or you can make a donation, where that is going to be more for down the line, future planning, future earning, especially end of game victory points type style. Then you have all of the different departments. You start off with a very select couple different departments, and there are up to 16 different departments in that game, depending on how many you use based on the player count, but also just adding to the randomness or the variability between each game itself. Each of them only can contain 3 employees, though, so you have to be able to pay for those employees, they have to be active there, and you can't have sent them on missions to earn income or to earn other resources already if you want to actually use them in the department that they are located in the first place. You can try it on Board Game Arena. There's not a whole lot of pledge levels. You're either, I like this, they're just going with the deluxe edition. They're not fooling around with a retail edition, so I give them credit for that. And the question, just again, with a lot of these, especially with the deluxe editions, is how much deluxeifications are you going to get? And the advantage right now that Darwin's Journey has is that they have, over $800,000 at the time of filming this, and they have a ton of stretch goals. They have too many expansions to go along with it, and so there's a lot more of this extra stuff that it may justify the higher price point in the end. Now, are we going to see as much here? I don't know. It's going to really depend on how fast this funds and how far they space them out. Obviously, like I've said, I am not a Euro person. This is a little bit beyond me. I actually tried to read the books because I was thinking about putting together a video that compared Darwin's Journey and Carnegie, and it kind of went over my head. So I can probably only give you the basic summaries, and I don't think the people that are interested in that game are going to be interested in my opinions as superficial as they most likely are. FYI. But when it comes down to this or Tinner's Trail or Darwin's Journey, I think you really need to take a look because all 3 of them are very different in how they use the worker placement actions. And so depending on what you want out of your worker placement, depending on if you want a lot of combos, if you want a lot of upgradable things, or if you want auctioning, each one of those games is going to give you a different thing. So next up, get your popcorn ready, because we have Fallen Knight. Now, this was hyped. There was a lot of hype about the artwork, the KDM influence, the mysterious nature of it, and finally, a delayed Kickstarter that finally launched. And day one, $64,000 of a $210,000 funding goal. Now, why is that? Now, this is actually very interesting. It is very Kickstarter-esque in a nutshell, because this is one of the sparsest game pages I have ever seen, especially for a game like this. Basically, there is art, there is a few renders down here of cards, and other cards, again, on a single stack that's clearly not an actual picture. Clearly not a whole lot going on in these cards, and this Facebook link here doesn't even link to content that's available on the boss. And they talk about these miniatures. You've got your pledge levels, $150 for the core plus secret stretch goals, and the Memory Eater pledge gets you the core and 3 huge expansions. Again, you get to see bosses, miniatures, misspellings, pictures that have been out there since the beginning of these miniatures that are supposedly in the expansions, individual ones. Again, telling you very little. Again, this one, a banned expansion in the Dark Realm. They are already assembled. The small miniatures, which we have not seen any pictures of, and the larger ones come on sprues. So how you're going to do that on a render, I'm just not really sure. And that is it, except for the shipping. Period. The video at the top of the page is literally just a compilation of the pictures that are down below, basically. I've got a front row seat right now, as you can see, pledging $240. And honestly, I'm probably going to drop it down to $1 here because the early backer, and I think that's why you have people even staying at this level watching this. As far as I know now, I think we're something along the lines of 8, 9, 10 hours into the campaign. No updates, no FAQ mentions, and no comments by the creator at all whatsoever. And a lot of disgruntled, to say the least, comment section basically saying, hey, what is going on? Is this just a money grab? Is this a scam? What is going on? And that's all I can do is laugh at this point. Thankfully, honestly, I'm happy actually by this, because it's something that if this product had been super amazing and overwhelming, man, I can't imagine having more than one of those, let alone 2 or 3 in a month, triple digits. So I'm actually happy that this turned out to be something that I don't have to put money towards in that sense. Not that it's the way it is, but just that I don't have to put money towards it. I want to see what's going to happen with this. It's sort of rubbernecking-ish, if you will, right now. But I'm interested to see what other response there is to this, if they're going to cancel, if it's just going to go and see what happens. Personally, I think right after this video, I'm just going to reduce my pledge to $1, and if something happens amazingly in the next day or two, I will be happy to miss on that early bird for the sake of it. But otherwise, I don't know. I guess I've never seen such quality preview and such little to back it up in that sense. And I don't know if that's just due diligence or understanding your market, or if there's something else going on here. So that is Fallen Knight, folks. Last up, Maeshowe in Orkney Saga. I mentioned this last week, 30-minute game, 1 to 2 player Viking survival game. This is the third game in 2 weeks that is really focusing on the 1, especially player count, but even the 2 player count. You're trying to escape basically this chamber that you're stuck in. There's the rule book, why to back now. I mean, again, low player count. They're emphasizing that. And you know what? You might as well. There is a distinct group of backers that really wants good solo games. And you make a good solo game, you're going to get well supported about this industry. You know, say that for what you will. There's a lot of games that you can play solo, but there aren't nearly as many designed for solo play in general. So I give a lot of kudos for guys that go out for this, and they seem to really do well. These games seem to be relatively well designed just by the nature, because otherwise I don't think we'd see as many. So if you skip down to the bottom, you can actually see that they make some historical references in this game, that this game is actually based on real life events about how some Vikings broke into this chambered tomb and they sheltered their men there during a snowstorm. However, they found some treasure. Several of their men went mad. And when they found the tomb later, many centuries later, they found this graffiti that was sort of recording what happened in the tomb. So the game is based on that, trying to escape from the tomb in the first place. It's a card game, and it's relatively simple. It's a 5-card hand, play 1, discard 1. Playing it in a row is going to have an effect. It allows you to do certain things. Discarding it may also have an effect. So it's not just getting rid of a card for the sake of getting rid of a card. Your main goal is trying to escape, and you're trying to play cards that will allow you to excavate those passage cards in a row. So, but you're going to have to manage things like fear, and you're going to have to manage the runes that are on the cards together in order to mitigate that. So all in all, again, it's a solo game. If you're interested, you should be checking it out. Personally, again, not a solo gamer, but the price point is good. It's a $21 game, probably plus some shipping, and this isn't going to be a big seller, so you probably won't be able to get this at wide distribution. So this is one of those few that I probably would say, if you're interested, you should seriously consider it on Kickstarter. They've got some stretch goals, which again, from a small publisher, usually these are relatively real stretch goals. They don't have the expense for, you know, additional art, because art is freaking expensive when it comes to these things. So I can completely believe that all of these stretch goals are completely legit to get some more art. Yeah, there you go. So that's it. That is it for this week's roundup of what's on Kickstarter that's new. What are you backing? Has anything caught your eye? Obviously, some things more than others. Or are you sticking with what you backed last week? Or are you looking forward to the week to come? I'm going to have a video out the next day, hopefully, talking about the games that are going to be funding in the following week, the last full week of January. So it's going to be exciting. And as one of the commenters said, I'm completely blanking on names, so I completely apologize. I think I'm going to do a video on Kickstarter on a budget. Let's do that. I think that's a brilliant concept, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and break it down by month. And we'll do maybe 1, 2, 3 budgets to say, okay, if you have this budget, you should be looking at backing at this if you're interested, or hey, you pass on this, or hey, late back so you can combine funds. Let's do it. You know, as a community, as the community that I'm trying to develop, I love that idea, and I'm going to take it and try and run with it. So if you like that, let me know as well. Any other features or things you think would make that better or well-served, let me know. Otherwise, thank you for watching my rambling. I'll see you around. Stay classy out there. 2021.